that could redefine the parameters of religious expression throughout Indiana has passed the state Senate. This week, the Indiana State Senate passed the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Supporters characterized the controversial bill as one that will limit state and local governments' ability to infringe on Hoosiers' religious practices, for instance, by protecting religious rights in the workplace. But opponents of the bill say it could have the opposite effect, giving Hoosiers a state-sanctioned reason to discriminate, particularly against same-sex couples. House Democratic leader Scott Pelath didn't hold back when expressing his feelings about the legislation.
These so-called conservatives just leave people alone. My goodness. Is it that hard for people to follow the golden rule and be nice to each other without the legislature thinking it needs to intervene every time? I'm going to claim the conservative mantle right now, okay? And I don't cede it to the other side. And this is conservative with a small c. That's not conservative, the stuff they do. That is social engineering. And just let people be. It's not that difficult. And that bill needs to go away.
The bill, which passed the Senate along party lines, goes on to the House for further consideration. Two pieces of legislation that could significantly impact some Hoosier businesses made critical progress through Indiana's General Assembly this week. The passage of Senate Bill 297 will allow microbreweries to expand their operations by increasing alcohol production from 30,000 barrels to 90,000 per year. That legislative change has long been championed by Hoosier craft brewers, in particular Munster's Three Floyds Brewing and Sun King Brewing in Indianapolis. The two breweries even collaborated on the creation of a signature beer to help draw attention to their efforts to, as Three Floyds says, redefine what it means to be a microbrewery in Indiana. In addition, the bill will require brewers to distribute their alcohol through wholesalers if their production does exceed 30,000 barrels. The Indiana House this week also passed a bill aimed at shoring up Indiana's casino industry. HB 1540 allows riverboat casinos to move onto land and allows for live dealers at Indiana's two racinos, that is combined racetrack and casinos, in Anderson and Shelbyville, to have live dealers. Supporters say the legislation will help Indiana's gaming industry, which has been facing some stiff competition from gaming options available in surrounding states. House Bill 1540 now goes to the state Senate for consideration. Indiana schools have begun administering the first I-STEP student assessment test this week. Schools opting to have students take the paper and pencil version began testing on Wednesday. The scheduled start of testing comes on the heels of legislation enacted in record time to shorten the test from a proposed 12-hour marathon to one that times out at about 9 hours. Education officials made the cuts in part by reducing the number of questions on the test and dropping a requirement for social studies testings in grades 5 and 7. State Representative Vernon Smith of Gary, a co-sponsor of the bill authorizing the Indiana Department of Education to curtail the exam, says the state created the environment that resulted in the longer test.
Many people across the state have been concerned about the length of the test. And we know that many tests are just too long. You can do what you want to do in a shorter version. However, that has not been the case. With the fact that Indiana chose not to go with the Common Core and then decided to create its own version of Common Core, it required us to create a test bank of questions. And so the length of the test was going to be longer than normal.
Administration of the computerized version of the I-STEP test will begin next week. More than 450,000 Indiana students in grades 3 through 8 are expected to take the I-STEP this year. Residents all over Northwest Indiana are wishing they could shorten the length of winter about now. This week, the region has again been dealing with snow and below normal temperatures. If you're one of the many people here in the region trying to keep warm this month, NIPSCO has some low-cost and no-cost tips that could save you money. The company has designed a number of programs to help customers save money during the winter months. One energy efficiency rebate can get homeowners up to $450 back on attic insulation. Another gives residents up to $250 back on a 95% efficient furnace. NIPSCO also has some simple suggestions to help consumers save now.
Very simple things that you can do that just, if the sun's out, open your windows, let the sun shine in, let the sun heat your home. Another one would be make sure that your air filter, you're changing those. You don't want your furnace to be working too hard because then that's when your bills go up. And if there's any leaks on any of your windows, you don't want the air sneaking out of there, so make sure to caulk them up.
For a full list of programs and tips to help manage energy use, go to nipsco.com/saveenergy. Coming up after the break, why local safety experts are concerning themselves with mall security. And Hillary Powell talks to a local artist about his very personal brand of beautification. That's next on Lakeshore Report.
Lakeshore Report wants to hear from you. Send your thoughts, concerns, questions, and story ideas to tvfeedback@lakeshorepublicmedia.org. You can also reach us on Facebook and Twitter at Lakeshore Report. Make sure to tweet us using the hashtag NWIPride and you may see your comments on air. Lakeshore Report, providing you region-focused content.
Islamic State threats to attack shopping malls here in the United States have some residents of Northwest Indiana genuinely concerned about an attack here in our area by homegrown ISIS supporters. This new threat against malls has some questioning the safety of the South Lake Mall in Maryville. Homeland Security experts we spoke to say they're trained to thwart a threat, and they're sharing more information about how to keep informed. The latest video from ISIS urges followers to attack malls in the U.S., Europe, and Canada. It's the latest attempt to strike fear into the hearts of Westerners.
Then imagine what a dedicated mujahid in the West could do to the American or Jewish-owned shopping centers across the world. What if such an attack was to occur in the Mall of America?
Here in Northwest Indiana, South Lake Mall has thousands of visitors daily. Jody Richmond, who is the executive director of Lake County Homeland Security, says a threat here is unlikely. Homeland Security officials here in Lake County say they are reviewing security plans for malls in the area at the direction of the Federal Department of Homeland Security.
You know, we advise people to be more aware at the mall or any big event where there's a lot of people. Just be aware of your surroundings, and if you have any sort of home plans or business plans, you know, maybe get those out and take a look at those.
Richmond adds, don't change your routines, don't stop going to the mall, but you should be more alert.
If you are in a situation where there's lots of people, you know, be aware of your surroundings, and if you see something, you should say something. Elijah Cole was a Gary policeman for many years before becoming part of the Lake County Homeland Security Department. He says one of the terrorists' goals is to frighten people and gain more publicity for their actions. And he says you should look for red flags that let you know there is a credible threat.
There are several things that you should do when you visit a mall or any large arena. One is be familiar with the door that you went in. So you can get back to that door if you need to in an emergency. You also need to be cognizant of all the exits and doors. Be cognizant of the people that you're surrounded by. Terrorists don't dress like a normal person in the streets. So if you see someone with a big heavy coat on and it's warm, a flag should go.
Some mall goers we spoke to say the latest video does have them concerned.
I don't know what to say. I just get in and get out, I guess.
I don't really go in the mall. It would make me afraid for my wife and kids.
Others say this latest threat from ISIS is part of their scare tactics. They say they will not change their plans to go to area malls because of the threat.
Because I believe in God, so I'm not too much worried about the mall getting attacked and stuff like that.
That doesn't make me afraid to go to the mall. It kind of disappoints me the fact that it's so easy to scare our Americans like this whenever we're supposed to be one of the strongest countries in the world.
If you are concerned about your safety in general because of terrorism threats, experts say prepare a plan to deal with any emergency. You can go to ready.gov and they will have all sorts of information about how to prepare for terrorism threats, like making a personal safety plan for your family and your business. Another state agency has been working hard to make sure that states' education standards work best for students. Steve Walsh has been following the swift succession of changes to Indiana's statewide standardized tests and the Department of Education. He takes an in-depth look with local education leaders.
A number of education issues are swirling at the state and local level. The State Board of Education has to contend with everything from how to shorten up the I-STEP test, which has doubled now to 12 hours, to how to handle the Gary school system, which has been declared an at-risk school district by the state. To talk about it, we have Tony Walker, a Gary attorney who is the State Board of Education member whose district covers Northwest Indiana. Tony, welcome.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Steve.
There's another bill out there that would allow the State Board of Education to pick its own chair. Right now, the chair is Glenda Ritz. She's the automatic chairman, the superintendent of public instruction. She's the only Democrat. The state school board all of the representatives are appointed by Republican Governor Mike Pence. In the end, I mean, is this a good idea? I mean,
oh, absolutely. First of all, let me say the legislation would not prevent Superintendent Ritz from running for chair, but I think there should be a certain level of accountability to the overall board in terms of how our rules and procedures are administered. If someone is just by law the chair, then there's no recourse when the board's rules and procedures are not being followed. So the way to have that level of accountability in terms of how meetings operate and how agendas are set, it makes sense that the chair would be elected. Indiana right now is only one of 2 states in the country where by statute the superintendent or the chief school officer is automatically chair of the state board, Oklahoma being the other state.
One of only a couple of states that have elected superintendents of public instruction, though a lot of states have elected boards of education for their states. Do you think that might be a compromise, that
No.
maybe have an appointed school superintendent but then have an elected school board? Everybody could vote on their own member around the state.
You know, personally, I don't think it's a good idea. Unfortunately, I think we already get too much politics into our education policy in the state of Indiana by the people that are elected. In this case, the governor, primarily, and the superintendent of public instruction and the members of the General Assembly. I think we need to be moving toward getting more politics out of the education policy business.
Do you think after this General Assembly and whatever happens that things will calm down? It's been a very contentious relationship between the governor, the superintendent, and the state board. Is there common ground there that you can see coming together finally after a couple of years?
Well, I think at a large level there's common ground in that everyone's trying to work for what's in the best interest of Indiana kids. Now, what that looks like and how you get there, you have different ideas about that. We have several different viewpoints even on our state board around that issue. People tend to think, or maybe it's just convenient politically, to group all the gubernatorial appointees into one basket, but we represent a pretty big variety in terms of points of view and policy positions.
We have so little time. I want to get to this. Gary schools, they're the only at-risk school district in the state of Indiana. They presented a plan to the state. Where does that system stand right now?
Well, I wouldn't say they're the only at-risk district in the state, Steve. There are other districts that are at risk. By far, they're the only failing district right now.
They're the only one actually designated, though, right, at this point, as an at-risk district?
Well, that was something they voluntarily entered into, by the way.
Okay.
So in order to get some additional support from the Indiana Department of Education, usually that designation is only used in very rare circumstances where there have been audit findings or other problems in terms of use of federal money. The federal government did not mandate that they be designated an at-risk district. That's a procedure they went into. But in terms of the overall issue there, I mean, whether it's Gary or any other school district in the country, the issues around education are going to have to be resolved at the local level. Gary is going to have to figure this out.
All right, well, that's unfortunately where you have to leave it, at least for right now. This has been Tony Walker, Gary attorney, and also member of the State Board of Education. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you, Steve.
We'll have an in-depth focus on education on next week's Lakeshore Report. Well, February is a nationally designated time to learn about culture. Black History Month is a way to celebrate the contributions of African Americans to American history. All month long, Lakeshore Report is highlighting local nods to this national holiday in a segment we call Lakeshore Salutes Black History Month. This week, we see how one homegrown artist's handiwork helps Hollywood celebrities put their best face forward. Marcus Jeter wants women to spend more time in the mirror.
If you do your makeup in 5 minutes, you're gonna look like it was done in 5 minutes. So this is your time when you do your makeup in the morning. This is your time to love yourself.
A take on time from a man who's been the hands behind looks for top Hollywood stars and international print ads for 3 decades.
So I've done thousands of faces, I'm sure.
He recently stopped by our studios. For a demonstration of his artwork, we recruited Lakeshore Executive Assistant Michelle Schukert.
I just had my birthday yesterday and I'm ready for a new look.
So she has amazing eyes. So we're going to really play up her eyes.
Behind this artist who is deliberate with each brushstroke is a man who stumbled into his craft.
I thought I was going to be a fashion buyer. I went to Chicago with a friend of mine who was an actress, and I did her makeup, and the photographer kept calling me. Well, 30 years later.
It's a gift that led him to clients like Derek Rose, Holly Robinson Pete, and gigs around the globe.
I've worked in Paris, I've worked in London, I've worked in the Czech Republic.
But Jeter's not from any of those places. He grew up in Gary.
I went to Lew Wallace.
That's what I thought. So you were in theater?
I was very much in theater. I was the president of a drama club when I was in high school.
He says his first inspiration came from a high school teacher.
My favorite teacher was Mrs. Hall. Her birthday's tomorrow, and we still are in contact. She was my drama teacher. I absolutely love Mrs. Hall. And she was really one of those teachers who championed you to really be who you were and to go after your dreams. And nothing was too big for any of her students. She would always tell us that. Just a wonderful person for me to go to for advice.
Jeter says he wants women to feel their best for less, so he sprinkles in affordable advice.
Drugstore brands are very sophisticated now. An emergency bag, 3 things. I would say a great concealer that matches your complexion, that way you can dot concealer on, use your fingers or a sponge to blend it down, great powder, and then a nice eyeshadow palette, something neutral.
After Michelle's transformation, Jeter's final touch, a makeup model that lasts even longer than the looks he creates.
Makeup is to be used to enhance your features, not cover them up. It's not to be used as a mask. Just be who you are.
Oh, wow.
For more information about Jeter's affordable beauty tips, you can log on to our website, lakeshorepublicmedia.org. A new interactive exhibit rolling into Michigan City hopes to make a positive impression on residents. John Kane finds out how the Lubeznik Center is getting art lovers to stretch their imagination on this week's Eye on the Arts.
Hi, joining me for this edition of Eye on the Arts is Amy Davis, Neverdauskas, Marketing Director at the Lubeznik Center for the Arts in Michigan City. Welcome back, Amy.
Thank you.
So I hear you have a new Executive Director at the Lubeznik Center.
We do. Erica Hanner.
Mm-hmm.
She comes to us from the Museum of Contemporary Art.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's great.
I read that she had something to do with the David Bowie exhibit.
She had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's very exciting. So we're really happy to have her, and she started mid-December, so she's been with us for a little while, and so she's had a great start.
Good, and she's a resident of the Dunes area, right?
Yes, yeah.
Well, that's wonderful for her and for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, good. So you have always a very ambitious exhibit program. And I think of Mannheim Steamroller when I think of the word steamroller. Tell me about the Steamroller printmaking exhibit.
Well, the Steamroller printmaking project was actually produced in Michigan City last summer. So there were about 30 prints that were made during that, and it was produced by another gallery in Michigan City called Walnut Inc., and there's some other sponsors that are involved with that. So it was a very ambitious public project, and we're showing a portion of those. Actually, we're showing some of the 3 foot by 7 foot plates, as well as the stretch print.
Hence
huge.
Steamroller.
Yes, yeah, it was very interesting to watch, and I've sent some images, about it. So
good.
Yeah, it was an immense project. So,
what other exhibits are going on right now?
The other one is Work Local, Art Meets Industry, and so there were a few different industries, or a couple different, Bloxam and Company in Michigan City and AAA Steel Supply in Lake County were part of that and provided materials or space to artists, and they created, local artists created work by materials provided by local companies.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So the two exhibits kind of interrelate.
Yeah, they speak about how how local things happen, how things are really integrated locally.
Right.
Yeah,
okay, so quickly, you have tomorrow as a deadline for what?
Our Lakefront Art Festival Call to Artists. So we have an early application that ends on February 28th, and you can actually apply until March 31st, but the fee is a little bit higher. So try to get in on the early deadline.
Okay. Thank you very much for being here. And thank you for watching. We'll be back again next week with another edition of Eye on the Arts. Eye on the Arts is made possible in part by South Shore Arts, the Indiana Arts Commission, and the National Endowment for the Arts, a federal agency.
Twice a month, Lakeshore Report teams up with the Society of Innovators and Ivy Tech Northwest to showcase some of the most forward-thinking projects and people the region has to offer. This week, we take a trip over the border to Batavia, Illinois to visit Fermilab, where physics students from Purdue University Calumet are leaving their mark on particle physics experiments that take place overseas in Geneva, Switzerland. There at the CERN laboratory, scientists are unlocking the secret to the basic building blocks of life, and our local scientists are playing an integral part.
We are trying to understand how the universe came into being. In the particle physics research specifically, we try to recreate the conditions of what might have happened at the time of Big Bang. The Higgs boson is very important because this helps us understand a very fundamental entity, which is the origin of mass itself. Since it's so fundamental to the existence of matter and us ourselves, if we didn't have it, then what would happen is that the building blocks of matter, atoms then will not bunch up with other atoms to form molecules, and in a sense, we would not exist. So it's as fundamental as that. For the most part, our technologically driven lives that we so much love, with all the fancy phones and flat screen TVs and what have you, is all a result of fundamental or pure sciences research. So that's the point I think those viewers who are watching this should actually walk away from it, is that it's because of these kinds of research that we have better lives today. I have had a very active team of physics undergraduate students. They have worked on all aspects leading to their contribution in the experiment, but primarily, they have worked in the laboratory here at Fermilab. We have a silicon detector facility where we are building a very integral part of the detector called the pixel detector. The pixel detector is very integral part of the tracker, which is the very first piece that's encountered by these collisions. This is one of the critical devices responsible for the discovery of the Higgs, because we were able to pinpoint where the interaction came from as a result of us building this really fancy state-of-the-art device. So I often get asked the question, okay, now you have discovered the Higgs, what next? The very fact that we have discovered is now actually the onset for more discoveries and more understanding, obviously leading us to more scientific endeavors. We don't yet know what immediate applications of finding the Higgs would be, but crowning achievements such as these can sometimes take decades before we see any meaningful, useful applications for our non-scientific community. And this discovery is so fundamental that in Northwest Indiana, we have put ourselves on this world map of discoveries.
To learn more about the Society of Innovators, visit www.nwisoi.org. Also, if you'd like to find out anything more about our stories, you can always go to our website, lakeshorepublicmedia.org. And you may have noticed we have someone new sitting beside us today. This is Stephen Lattimore. And Stephen, you've been in the area for a while, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm born and raised in Chicago, live in the south suburbs now. Found out about the opportunity here and was happy to come out of retirement and join you guys.
We are so happy to have you, and I'm sure our viewers are going to appreciate it as well.
Yeah, and call me. I got some story ideas I'm working on already.
Yeah, and speaking of that, what are we working on for next week?
We're going to do some in-depth stories and look at education in the region and statewide.
We want to thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you next time on Lakeshore Report.